4 delivery drivers for different states. All of them got the same message mid-route. They're early. He left the engine running like the app told him to. Got out. Walked to the door. When he turned back, someone had opened his truck. She placed the package at the threshold. Straightened up. Looked down. It was already gone. The door hadn't moved. Then every door opened. At the same time. 12 rooms. No lights. Nobody came out. The gate slammed shut behind him. Keypad dead. No signal. And the window that was dark wasn't dark anymore. Watch till the end. Story 1. The house past the last streetlight, I started doing late-night food delivery in Central Ohio after my hours got cut at work. Most nights were boring. College kids ordering wings. Tired nurses grabbing takeout. The app always paid a little extra after 10 p.m., so I got into the habit of accepting one last order before heading home. That's how I ended up driving 15 minutes outside town on a Tuesday night to an address I'd never heard of. The payout was high for a small order, which usually means it's far out or hard to find. The map showed a thin gray road cutting through farmland. No streetlights, no nearby houses, just open black space around it. The customer name was L. No profile picture, no delivery instructions. Once I left the highway, the road narrowed into something barely paved. Cornfields on both sides. My headlights were the only light for miles. I remember checking the app twice to make sure I hadn't taken a wrong turn. The GPS insisted I was 3 minutes away. Then the streetlights stopped completely. The address number popped up on my screen, but there were no visible mailboxes. No reflective numbers. Just darkness and trees set back from the road. The GPS told me I'd arrived, but I didn't see a house. I rolled forward slowly until my headlights caught the outline of something set far back behind a line of dead shrubs. It looked like a house, but all the windows were black. No porch light, no movement. As I was deciding whether to call the customer, I saw someone already standing near the end of the driveway. They weren't waving. They weren't walking toward me, just standing there, off to the side, partially in shadow. I hadn't even parked yet. I stayed in my car and cracked the window enough to call out, "Delivery for L?" The person didn't answer. They stepped closer, slowly, into the headlights. It was a man, maybe mid-40s. No jacket, even though it was cold. Hands at his sides. Face blank. He didn't look at the food. He looked at me. "You're early," he said. I checked the time. I wasn't. I was actually 3 minutes late according to the app. I told him the total, and he said he'd already paid. That part was true. It was prepaid, but he kept standing too close to my door. Close enough that if I opened it, I'd have to step around him. I told him I could just hand it through the window. He didn't respond, just stared at me, then slowly turned his head toward the house behind him. I followed his gaze. For a second, I thought I saw a movement in one of the dark windows. Not a light turning on, just a shape shifting slightly behind the glass. When I looked back at him, he was smiling. Not friendly, not aggressive, just stretched. "Can you bring it to the door?" he asked. Every instinct told me not to get out of the car. I said I wasn't allowed to leave the vehicle after 10 p.m. company policy. That was a lie, but it came out fast. He didn't argue. He just kept staring. Then he reached into his pocket. I locked my door immediately. He pulled out his phone and looked down at it. A second later, my app updated. Order canceled. I blinked at the screen. It now showed no active delivery, no address, no customer, like it had never existed. When I looked back up, he had stepped back into the darkness beyond my headlights. I couldn't see him clearly anymore, just the faint outline of where he'd been standing. Then my phone buzzed with a message through the app's support chat. "Why did you stop so far from the house?" It wasn't from the customer. It came from an unverified system notification. No name attached. I looked up at the house again. One of the upstairs windows now had a faint glow behind it, and there were 2 silhouettes, not one. I didn't wait to see if they moved. I drove off without delivering the food, even though technically the order no longer existed. The app showed no history of it later. No payout. No record. When I contacted support the next day, they told me there was no delivery logged to that address at that time. I stopped taking last orders after that. But sometimes when I'm driving late and pass a stretch of road with no streetlights, I think about how that man was already waiting before I even pulled in, like he knew exactly when I'd arrive. Story 2. The gate code that wasn't mine. I was delivering packages for a major retailer outside Dallas during the holidays. which meant long routes and late nights. Most of my stops were suburban neighborhoods with identical houses and glowing Christmas lights. The route that night looked normal until the final delivery popped up. It was flagged as priority, even though it was after 11 p.m., which was unusual for residential drops. The address led me toward a gated community I'd never entered before. It wasn't on my usual rotation. The houses sat on oversized lots, separated by trees and long curved driveways. The GPS guided me to a metal gate at the end of a private road. There was no guard booth, just a keypad and a camera mounted above it. The delivery instructions read, "Gate code 0913. Leave at front door. Do not ring." I punched in the code. The gate opened immediately. That should have been routine, but something about how fast it opened bothered me. Usually there's a delay, a buzz, something mechanical. This just slid open like it had been waiting. I drove inside. The road wound through trees, deeper than I expected. I didn't pass a single other house, just darkness and the faint glow of my headlights catching tree trunks. After about 2 minutes, the GPS announced I had arrived. The driveway was long and gravel, crunching loudly under my tires. The house at the end was enormous but completely dark. No porch lights, no decorative lights, nothing. I parked near the steps and grabbed the package. The label matched the address. Name on it was C. Harper. No special notes beyond "Do not ring." As I walked up the steps, I noticed the front door was slightly open. Not wide, just enough to see a thin strip of darkness inside. I stopped. Sometimes people do that if they're expecting a delivery. But at almost midnight, in a gated community, with no lights on, I called out, "Delivery." No answer. The wind moved through the trees behind me. I suddenly felt very aware of how far from the road I was. I stepped forward and placed the package just inside the doorway, not fully crossing the threshold. The interior smelled faintly metallic, like old pipes. As I straightened up, I heard something from inside the house. Not footsteps, not a voice. Breathing, slow, controlled, close. I froze. It wasn't coming from deep inside the house. It sounded like it was just beyond the door, like someone was standing on the other side of the wall to my left. I took a step back. The breathing stopped. For a second, there was complete silence. Then, from somewhere upstairs, I heard a single heavy thud, like something being dropped. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I almost dropped it. It was a text from an unknown number. "You used the wrong gate code." I stared at the screen. The delivery instructions clearly said 0913. That's what I'd used. The gate had opened. Another message came through immediately. "That wasn't your code." My stomach tightened. I looked back at the gate, barely visible through the trees. It was still open. Then I noticed something I hadn't before. There were 2 keypads on either side of the gate. I had only seen the one facing outward, the one I used. The other side faced inward, meaning the code I entered wasn't necessarily the code for this house. It was just a code that opened the gate. My phone buzzed again. "You're at the wrong house." I checked the delivery app. The address had changed. Same street name, different number. I looked at the mailbox by the driveway for the first time. The numbers didn't match what was on my screen now. I felt the air shift behind me. The front door creaked open wider. I didn't turn around. Another message came through. "Do not turn around." I turned around. The doorway was empty. The package I had just set down was gone. Not pulled inside. Not kicked aside. Gone. The interior beyond the door was completely black. No shape. No movement. Just darkness. Then the gate behind me slammed shut. I heard the metal clang echo through the trees. My phone vibrated again. "You weren't supposed to be here yet." That's when I ran. I didn't go back for the truck. I ran down the gravel driveway, heart pounding, expecting someone to grab me from behind. When I reached the road, I saw my truck still parked where I left it. Engine off. Lights off. But the driver's side door was open. I know I shut it. I always shut it. I got inside, locked everything, and reversed fast enough that gravel sprayed behind me. The gate was closed now, completely. No keypad lit up. I tried the code again. Nothing. I tried calling the customer number listed in the app. It went to voicemail immediately. Generic recording. When I finally got back to the main road and checked the app, the delivery had disappeared from my route history. No record. No customer name. I reported it to my supervisor the next morning. He told me gated community glitches happen sometimes. Codes get mixed up. I drove that same road a week later in daylight. There was no gated entrance. Just a dirt path leading to a construction site where houses were being built. No finished homes. No massive dark house at the end of a gravel driveway. And no trees thick enough to hide one. Story 3. The route that kept updating. I was driving overnight freight between Missouri and Western Kentucky when the app added a last-minute stop to my route. It was just after 1 a.m., and I was already behind schedule. Normally, I would have ignored an add-on that late, but the pay adjustment was high enough that I accepted it without thinking too much. The address was listed as a residential drop, signature required. That was unusual for the hour. Most residential deliveries default to no contact after 9 p.m., but the system flagged it as urgent redelivery. Apparently, 2 previous attempts had failed. The location was about 20 minutes off the highway, down a 2-lane road that cut through dense woods. No towns marked nearby, just a thin blue line on the map and a blinking destination point. As I drove, I noticed my signal dropping in and out. That wasn't uncommon in rural areas, but the delivery app stayed active, recalculating the route every few minutes. Each time it recalculated, the arrival time shifted slightly later, even though I was getting closer. About 10 minutes in, I passed the last gas station on the route. It was closed, the parking lot empty. After that, there were no buildings at all. The road narrowed and eventually lost its center lines. My headlights caught tree branches arching overhead, creating a tunnel effect. I checked the address again. Still active, still requesting a signature. Then the app made a soft chime. Customer note updated. I glanced at the screen at a stop sign in the middle of nowhere. Please don't park in the driveway. That was new. It hadn't been there before. Fine. Not unusual. Some people are picky. I kept driving. 2 minutes later, another chime. Customer note updated. Leave engine running. I frowned. That wasn't standard wording. It didn't sound like a delivery preference. It sounded like an instruction. I considered canceling the stop, but curiosity mixed with stubbornness. I was already deep in, and technically, I hadn't seen anything threatening. The GPS announced I was 1 minute away. That's when my headlights caught a mailbox leaning at an angle near the edge of the road. The numbers were faded, barely readable, but they matched the address. There was no visible house, just a narrow gravel path leading into the trees. The app insisted I had arrived. I rolled forward slowly, tires crunching on gravel. About 50 feet in, the trees opened slightly to reveal a small, single-story house with peeling paint and no exterior lights. The windows were dark. No cars parked outside. I checked the time. 1:42 a.m. Another chime. Customer note updated. You're early. I felt my chest tighten. The estimated arrival time on my screen showed 1:44 a.m. I was technically 2 minutes early. The engine idled loudly in the quiet woods. I remembered the note. Leave engine running. I did. I stepped out of the truck with the package tucked under my arm. The night air felt colder than it should have been for early fall. No crickets. No wind. Just the sound of my engine and distant rustling from the trees. Halfway to the porch, the front door opened. No porch light flipped on. It just opened inward. A man stepped into the doorway. Tall, thin, wearing a gray hoodie with the hood up. I couldn't see his face clearly. Signature required, I said, holding up the handheld device. He didn't respond. He just looked past me toward my truck. Then he said, "You came alone?" The question caught me off guard. "Yeah," I said automatically. He tilted his head slightly. "That's different." I swallowed. Different from what? He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped back into the house without closing the door. I stood there for a second, unsure what to do. The app still showed the delivery as active. Signature pending. Then my phone vibrated in my pocket. Not the delivery device. My personal phone. Unknown number. You shouldn't have answered him. My stomach dropped. I turned slowly toward the road. There was a second vehicle parked behind my truck. No headlights on. No engine sound. It hadn't been there when I pulled in. The driver's door was open, and someone was standing beside it. I couldn't see their face either. Another vibration. You were supposed to stay in the truck. The front door of the house creaked wider behind me. I was suddenly aware that I was standing between two unknown people in complete darkness. The man in the doorway spoke again. "You're not the usual driver." I backed toward my truck, trying to keep both in view. "What usual driver?" I asked. He stepped forward this time, onto the porch. "The one who doesn't get out." My delivery device chimed loudly in my hand. Customer note updated. Too late. That's when the second vehicle's interior light flicked on. I saw inside for just a second. There was no driver in the seat. The door was open, but the seat was empty. The person standing next to it was no longer there. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The man from the doorway stepped off the porch and began walking toward me. Slowly, not running, not threatening, just deliberate. "You changed the pattern," he said. I dropped the package on the gravel and got into my truck without closing the back properly. I slammed the door and threw it into reverse. As I backed out, my headlights swept across the house again. There were more people standing on the porch now. At least 3, all in dark clothing, none of them moving, watching. I hit the main road without looking back and didn't slow down until I reached the highway. About 5 miles later, I finally checked the app. The delivery was marked as completed, signed, with my name. I hadn't signed anything. I contacted dispatch the next morning. They told me that address wasn't on my official route log. There was no record of a redelivery request. No customer named at that location. When I drove through that stretch again weeks later in daylight, I couldn't even find the gravel path, just continuous tree line. But sometimes, on overnight routes, my app will briefly flash a notification while recalculating. Customer note updated, even when I don't have an active delivery. And once, just once, I saw it display a familiar line before disappearing. Leave engine running. I don't take add-on stops after midnight anymore, because I still don't know what pattern I interrupted that night, or what would have happened if I'd stayed in the truck like I was apparently supposed to. Story 4. The motel that wasn't on my route. I was doing late-night grocery deliveries in northern Arizona when this happened. It was the kind of area where towns are separated by long stretches of highway and empty land. Most of my drops were in Flagstaff, but every now and then the app would push me towards smaller surrounding communities for surge pay. It was close to 2 a.m. when the final order came through. Large grocery run, mostly bottled water, canned food, batteries, and 2 first aid kits. The payout was almost triple what it should have been for the distance. The address listed a roadside motel off Highway 89. I'd driven that highway dozens of times and didn't remember any motel at that mile marker, but I figured I'd just overlooked it. The delivery instructions were short. Room 12, not 3 times. Step back. That was it. I debated canceling, but the payout was too tempting. I accepted and started driving north. The highway was nearly empty, just the occasional semi passing in the opposite direction. About 15 minutes in, the GPS told me to take an exit I'd never used before. It was unlit and barely marked. My headlights caught an old green sign with peeling paint. No motel name, just the number for the exit. The ramp led to a narrow service road running parallel to the highway. No buildings in sight, just darkness and scrubland. The app said I was 2 minutes away. Then it chimed. Customer note updated. Do not speak. I stared at the screen. That wasn't there before. I told myself it was probably someone with anxiety who didn't want interaction. Some customers get weirdly specific at night. The GPS finally announced arrival, and that's when I saw it. A small, single-story motel sitting alone about 100 yards off the road. 12 doors in a straight line. Faded blue paint. Half the roof shingles missing. No visible sign out front. Only one exterior light was on. Above room 12. I slowed my car, but didn't park right away. I scanned the lot. No other vehicles. No vending machines humming. No front office light. The place looked abandoned. The app still showed the delivery active. I parked facing the exit and kept the engine running. Something about that instruction earlier stuck with me. As I stepped out with the groceries, the night air felt heavy. Too quiet. No highway noise, even though the road was right there. I walked toward room 12. The light above it flickered once. The curtains were drawn tight. I set the bags down outside the door and knocked 3 times. Exactly like the instructions said. Then I stepped back. Nothing happened. For about 10 seconds. Then the door opened just a few inches. Not enough to see inside. A hand slid out. Thin, pale, shaking slightly. It didn't reach for the bags. It just stayed there, waiting. I remembered the second instruction. Do not speak. So I didn't. The hand slowly pointed toward the parking lot behind me. I turned my head. There was now a car parked 2 spaces down from mine. I hadn't heard it arrive. Its headlights were off. Engine off. Driver's door open. The hand outside room 12 curled slightly, like it was urging me to keep looking. I felt my chest tighten. Another door along the motel row creaked open. Then another. Room 8. Room 5. No lights came on inside them, just doors opening slowly in the dark. I turned back toward room 12. The hand was gone. The door was still cracked open, but now I could see part of a face in the gap. An eye staring at me, wide, not blinking, terrified. The eye shifted past me toward the parking lot. I heard gravel crunch, not from my direction, from behind the motel. Footsteps, slow, multiple. The app chimed again in my pocket. Customer note updated. They're early. That's when every motel room door swung open at once. Not violently, just in unison, each one revealing a dark interior, and silhouettes standing inside, not stepping out, just standing there, watching. I grabbed my keys tighter and started backing toward my car. The car that had appeared wasn't empty anymore. There was someone sitting in the driver's seat now. I couldn't see their face, but the interior light was on, and they were looking directly at me. The eye in room 12 shifted again. Then the voice finally came from inside. A whisper. Leave. Not aggressive. Desperate. The silhouettes in the other doorways began stepping forward. Slowly, I dropped the remaining grocery bag and ran to my car. As I slammed the door shut, every exterior light on the motel flicked off at once. Total darkness. I fumbled the ignition, reversed hard, and almost clipped the car that hadn't been there before. As my headlights swept across it, I saw something that made my stomach drop. There was no license plate, no brand emblem, no visible driver. The seat was empty again, but the driver's door was still open. I hit the gas and sped back toward the service road without looking back. The highway noise returned as soon as I reached the ramp, like someone had unmuted the world. When I checked the app at the next gas station, the delivery was marked complete. 5-star rating. Tip added. From a customer account that didn't exist when I searched it later. I drove that stretch of Highway 89 again a week later in daylight. There was no exit at that mile marker. Just guardrail. No service road. No motel. Nothing but open land. But sometimes, late at night when I'm driving and the app recalculates, it briefly flashes an address before disappearing. Room 12, and the note beneath it. Knock 3 times. Step back. I don't do overnight deliveries anymore, because I still don't know who in that motel was more dangerous. The people inside the rooms, or whatever was arriving early from behind it.